For several hours now, a young man had been wandering around the lakeside property. Time leaned toward sunset, yet he couldn't find his way out, even though he knew the woods like the back of his hand. He couldn't even explain how he got lost. Though living in the city and not in the wild, he loved to spend weekends in nature. His name was Alexander, a kind, empathetic guy always ready to help. One of his passions was fishing. This weekend, he had headed toward a forest lake. Lost and tired, Alexander settled to rest on a soft moss bed. Suddenly, he stumbled onto a clearing, and to his surprise, the lake before him wasn't the one he had been aiming for. He was certain his lake was narrow and long, but this one was round. Even more striking was a wooden cabin nearby, with a plank walkway stretching into the water like a small bridge. I've walked here 1,000 times, Alexander thought, and never noticed this cabin. Maybe its owner was around. He'd asked to stay the night. He walked up to the door and knocked. "Is anyone here?" he called. "Sorry to intrude. I got a bit lost. May I spend the night?" There was no reply, and the cabin's interior was dim. "It looks like an old hunting cabin," Alexander reasoned. "It's not hunting season, so perhaps it's empty. I mean no harm. I'll just make myself cozy." He entered the cabin, set down his backpack, and removed his coat. Lighting the stove warmed the place, creating a snug atmosphere. After a modest dinner, he stepped outside onto the porch to explore. He paused to admire the enchanting view. The wooden walkway winding directly to the water tempted him, and he felt an impulsive urge to swim. Despite the murky water, it was surprisingly warm. Why not? He thought. Quickly stripping off his clothes, he dove into the greenish lake, floated near the bridge, and kicked his legs leisurely. Then something barely brushed his foot. Probably algae, he mused. But the second touch on his other foot felt deliberate, like a hand. Startled, Alexander pulled his foot out of the water. "There must be fish here. I should set up my rod tomorrow morning," he decided. Walking back across the bridge toward the cabin, he entered its silence. Pouring himself a warm cup of tea and settling at the window seat, he let the quiet forest darkness lull him to sleep. One sip, and he was almost dozing. He woke early to the sound of gentle singing. At first he couldn't pinpoint the source, but as he lay still, he realized it was faint. Feminine voices humming a melody, not distinct words. Rising quietly with the moonlight illuminating the lake, he spotted 4 women in long white dresses on the far shore. Their hair loose, they moved slowly, dancing in unison. Alexander watched, hypnotized. Unsure how long he stood there, he suddenly brushed against someone, a pale woman in similar attire, standing just inside the cabin doorway. She glowed faintly and stared at him with luminous white eyes. Alarmed by the electrical shock that ran through him, Alexander fled through the door. As he ran out, he tripped and tumbled down to the clearing. He lay flat on the ground, too afraid to rise. All he could see were 4 pairs of pale legs surrounding him. He forced himself to look up. 8 pairs of glowing, deathly eyes peered down at him. The women began to laugh, weaving around him like in a frantic circle. Their laughter grew louder and louder, their lights merging into a blinding ring. Alexander lost consciousness. He came to at dawn, lying on the meadow before the cabin. He opened his eyes but couldn't recall what had happened. Shaking off confusion, he rose and walked inside for tea. As his memory returned, he doubted if any of it was real. He left the cabin and locked the door behind him. He needed to get home. Following the path he'd come, his mind replayed the previous night's events. "Maybe exhaustion got the better of me," he murmured, kicking dried leaves as he walked. Yet soon, he stood before that same clearing with the lake and cabin. "What's wrong with this place?" he grumbled. Frustrated after hours of wandering, his stomach empty, he reminded himself, this was still a day off. He'd make the most of it. He returned to the cabin, hung up his coat, grabbed his fishing rod, and headed to the water. A delicious fish soup was bubbling on a small stove, and Alexander silently thanked the unknown hunter for leaving supplies behind: grain, preserved food, everything he used. Evening came. Darkness fell in the forest. Alexander brewed tea, carried it out to a chair on the porch, and sat down to enjoy the tranquil twilight. But suddenly, gentle ripples appeared on the water's surface. He stared, entranced. A faint mist drifted across the dark green lake. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting a silvery veil over the water. Ripples spread out, gently washing over the walkway. One by one, 4 heads surfaced and rose onto the wooden bridge. They were the same women from the night before. In white dresses, they stepped onto the shore and began their song again, a mournful melody. From inside the cabin, Alexander listened intently, but couldn't make out all the lyrics. The chorus seemed to call for a sister who had been waiting too long, beckoning her to join them. Then a voice behind him startled him. Turning swiftly, he saw a pale girl standing in the doorway. She looked trapped, as if an invisible barrier kept her inside. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "I'm the sister," she replied softly. "And the women on the clearing. They are my sisters. They've been calling for me for years, but I can't join them, no matter how much I long to." "Who's keeping you here?" "There's no one else," he asked gently. She wept lightly. "I can't leave. My body is trapped in the cabin's cellar. My soul aches to be with them, but I can't go." His heart ached at her sorrow. "Tell me what happened," he urged. The ghost girl began to describe a village tragedy. Long ago, a family, a mother, father, and 5 daughters, lived in a village near the forest. Life was happy until war arrived. The father was drafted, leaving the mother and daughters to manage alone. Times were hard, and the cruel village mayor pressured the mother to marry him. He claimed he'd accuse them of stealing food if they refused. One day, the mother struck him hard with a shoe, and the daughters laughed at his surprise. Furious, he returned with villagers one evening, labeling the family witches. An angry mob broke into their home, demanding gold hidden by the sisters. The sisters fled to the cabin by the lake. They lived quietly until the mayor spread rumors about hidden treasure. Angry men stormed the cabin, found no gold, dragged the girls back to the village. One sister escaped into the cellar and managed to lock herself in, but the rest were thrown into the lake. Freezing, they drowned. The mayor and the mob eventually died in the woods, struck by a falling tree. Those sisters who drowned. The ghost girl's voice trembled. They sing to bring me back, but my body lies in the cellar, chained. Until they are all together, wherever they roam, they cannot rest. She sobbed again. Alexander felt compelled to help. "Give me your body," she whispered. "Bring it to my sisters. I cannot bear to remain alone, accused and forgotten." Alexander nodded. "If I help you, perhaps I will also find my way out of this place." He fetched a lantern and a crowbar from his backpack and removed the boards sealing the cellar door. The cellar smelled damp. He found a rickety ladder leading down. Carefully descending, he found a small chamber lit by his lantern. In the corner lay a fragile, mummified body in a tattered dress, knees bent, head bowed in acceptance. Gently, Alexander lifted her and carried her onto the porch. The moon shone brightly, illuminating the meadow. The 4 ghostly sisters stood ahead, arms extended in invitation. Alexander stepped onto the bridge with the pale body cradled in his arms. The sisters walked beside him toward the lake's edge. At the water's edge, he placed the body slowly into the surface. The sisters watched silently as she drifted away, until she finally sank into the black water. A hush fell over the clearing. No wind, no birdsong. Only the moonlight bathing the lake. Alexander knelt by the water as the surface calmed, each ripple fading. Years passed, and Alexander never found the cabin or the lake again. But wherever he fished afterward, his catch was always unusually large. Villagers joked, he must have the lake's blessing, though he knew his luck came from something far deeper.